What if the moon isn't as empty as we've been told? For decades, we've looked at it as a dead world. Silent, frozen, unchanging. But what if that silence is hiding something? Because in the middle of the Cold War, a man claimed he saw structures on the moon. Not through a telescope, not through a spacecraft, but with his mind. And according to him, what he saw was not supposed to be there. To understand this story, we need to go back to a time when the world was divided. The Cold War, a period defined by fear, secrecy, and an intense race for superiority. Not just in weapons, not just in space, but in intelligence. Governments were willing to explore ideas that today might sound unbelievable. Psychic abilities, mind control, human perception beyond the physical senses. Because if even a small part of it were true, it could change everything. One of those ideas was called remote viewing. Remote viewing was based on a simple but controversial concept, that the human mind could access information from distant places without being physically present. It wasn't just speculation. Experiments were conducted. Subjects were asked to describe locations they had never seen. Sometimes the results were surprisingly accurate. Detailed descriptions, correct layouts, objects identified from miles away. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't always reliable. But it was enough to keep the experiments going. And at the center of some of these experiments was a man named Ingo Swann. Swann was not what you would expect. He wasn't a military officer. He wasn't a traditional scientist. He was an artist, a thinker, someone deeply interested in human consciousness. But he also claimed something unusual, that he could perceive things beyond normal limits. His abilities were tested, observed, and in some cases, taken seriously. Enough to attract attention, the kind of attention that doesn't come from the public, but from people who operate in silence. According to his account in Penetration, a book he wrote in 1998, Swann was contacted by a man he had never met before. The man introduced himself as Axelrod. No first name, no explanation, just a presence. Calm, direct, authoritative. Swann was invited to participate in a private experiment, different from anything he had done before. He was taken to a secure location, a place where everything felt controlled, where questions didn't seem welcome. And once inside, he was given a target: the moon. At first, his observations were exactly what you would expect. A barren surface, gray dust, craters stretching into the distance. Nothing alive, nothing moving. But then something changed. He began to notice patterns, not random shapes, not natural formations, but structure, defined lines, angles, geometry. He described what appeared to be towers, rising above the surface, casting long shadows. He saw formations that looked like bridges, connecting different areas. And then he described something even more unsettling. Movement, not mechanical, not random, but controlled, deliberate, as if something was operating there. He claimed there were figures, entities, engaged in activity, focused, purposeful, as if the moon was not empty at all. And then everything changed. Swann said that one of the figures stopped, slowly turned, and looked directly at him. Not physically, but somehow it knew he was there, as if his observation had been detected, as if distance didn't matter. At that exact moment, the session ended. No warning, no explanation, just silence, as if a boundary had been crossed, as if something was not meant to be seen. Now let's step back, because this is where the story changes. Remote viewing programs did exist. That part is real. Experiments were conducted, data was collected, but there is no verified evidence that anyone successfully used remote viewing to observe the moon in this way. There are no official records confirming Swann's experience. No documentation, no independent verification, only his account. But Swann's story is not the only one, because years before his account was ever published, another man made a very different claim. Not about perception, not about the mind, but about something physical, something captured, recorded. His name was Karl Wolfe. He was a technician in the United States Air Force during the 1960s, assigned to work with highly classified satellite imagery. According to Wolfe, In 1965, he was temporarily stationed at a facility where lunar photographs were being processed. Images captured by early reconnaissance missions. Detailed, high resolution, far beyond what the public had ever seen at the time. While working there, Wolfe claimed he was shown something unusual, a photograph of the moon's surface, specifically, the far side, what many people call the dark side of the moon. And in that image, he said there were structures, not craters, not natural formations, but geometric shapes, lines, towers, something that looked like a base. He described it as artificial, engineered, deliberate. According to Wolfe, the technician showing him the image spoke casually, as if it wasn't shocking, as if it was already known, already accepted, but not meant to be discussed. Wolfe would later share this story publicly, decades after his military service. He claimed that what he saw suggested something extraordinary, that we were not alone in observing the moon. But just like Swann's experience, there is no official confirmation, no released images, no verified documentation supporting his claim, only his testimony. Two different men, two completely different methods, one using the mind, the other technology, and yet both describing something similar. Structures, activity, presence, on a place we've always believed was empty. Swann used the mind. Wolfe trusted what he saw. But the next event was captured by instruments, and it left behind a question that no one expected, one that was officially recorded. During the early Apollo missions, NASA conducted a series of impact tests on the moon. After completing their objectives, parts of the spacecraft were intentionally directed to crash into the lunar surface. The goal was simple: measure the moon's internal structure, using seismometers left behind by the astronauts. In one of these experiments, a lunar module ascent stage was sent crashing down. The impact was expected to create vibrations. Small, brief, predictable, but that's not what happened. According to mission data, the moon didn't just react. It rang, like a bell. The vibrations continued, not for seconds, not for minutes, but for hours. Some reports suggest nearly 3 hours of sustained reverberation, as if the surface had absorbed the impact and kept echoing it far longer than expected. Scientists later explained this behavior. They pointed to the moon's dry, rigid structure, the lack of water, the absence of tectonic activity, all of which could allow vibrations to travel more efficiently, to last longer, to fade slowly. But even with those explanations, the description remained unsettling. A celestial body responding like something hollow, like something engineered, or at least not as simple as we once believed. Today, the moon is no longer just a memory of the past. New missions are being planned. New technology is being developed. Humanity is preparing to return after decades of silence. Which raises a question. If something unusual had ever been there, would we see it now? Or would it remain hidden just beyond our reach? Because in the end, this story exists in a strange place. Between fact and interpretation. Between science and possibility. And maybe that's exactly where it belongs. Unfortunately, I don't have the answers. I'm just showing you the pieces. What you choose to believe is entirely up to you. Stay curious. Until next time. Peace.